Well, honey is a pantry staple in many homes and globally has a market size of $9 billion and growing.
Likely heard about the alarming amount of bees dying all over the world for the past few years. And it turns out this year has been especially brutal, with hundreds of millions of them dying.
Across the quiet fields of America, where wildflowers sway and hives hum with life, a silent invasion is spreading, one that threatens not just bees, but the very foundation of the nation's $700 million honey industry. These aren't the gentle honeybees that farmers and beekeepers depend on. They're invaders, foreign bee species that have slipped into the ecosystem and begun a hostile takeover. Their arrival is transforming the delicate balance of pollination, spreading new diseases, outcompeting local bees for food, and in some cases, destroying colonies that took years to build. It's a crisis that stretches from the almond farms of California to the forests of the East Coast, where beekeepers are fighting back against a swarm that won't stop growing. America's honey industry has long depended on one species above all others, the European honeybee, Apis mellifera. Originally imported in the 1600s, this bee became the backbone of American agriculture. It's responsible for pollinating more than a third of the country's food supply, everything from apples and almonds to blueberries and clover. Its honey fuels a multi-million-dollar export trade, and its wax, pollen, and propolis support cosmetics, medicines, and countless small businesses. But that delicate system now faces its most dangerous threat in decades. Invasive bees, species that don't belong in these ecosystems, are spreading rapidly, bringing with them parasites, pathogens, and chaos. The most notorious among them are the Africanized honeybees, often called killer bees. These bees were first introduced to Brazil in the 1950s during an experiment to increase honey production in tropical climates. But they escaped, spread northward through South and Central America, and eventually reached the southern United States. Fiercer, faster, and far more territorial than European honeybees, they hybridized with local populations, creating colonies that defend themselves with swarming aggression. Entire beekeeping operations in Texas, Arizona, and Florida have been overrun. Workers approaching a hive can be attacked from hundreds of feet away. Farmers have learned to keep their distance or risk being stung by the thousands. For small honey producers, one invasion can wipe out years of work overnight. But the Africanized bees aren't the only invaders. In the last decade, several other species have joined the assault. The Asian honeybee, Apis cerana, has been detected in cargo shipments and ports along the Pacific, bringing with it a deadly hitchhiker, the Varroa destructor mite. This tiny parasite latches on honeybees, sucking their blood like hemolymph and spreading viruses that cripple their immune systems. Once Varroa enters a hive, it can cause total collapse in weeks. American beekeepers already spend millions annually on treatments to keep the mite at bay, but the arrival of new carriers, like the Asian bee, makes containment nearly impossible. Then there's the more recent arrival of the Asian giant hornet, nicknamed the murder hornet. First spotted in Washington state in 2019, these 2-inch predators can wipe out entire hives within hours. A handful of hornets can decapitate thousands of bees, feeding their larvae on the thoraxes of the dead. For commercial beekeepers already struggling with mites, pesticides, and habitat loss, the hornet invasion was almost apocalyptic. State agencies scrambled to find and destroy nests before they could spread. Specialized traps, drones, and even thermal imaging cameras were deployed to track them through dense forests. It became a race between technology and nature, and for once, humans barely won. But the threat isn't gone. Scientists fear more hornets could arrive hidden inside shipping containers or cargo shipments from Asia at any time. Behind all this chaos lies one driving force: global trade. Invasive species rarely fly across oceans on their own. They hitch rides in with crates, soil, or agricultural imports. As trade volumes increase, so does the likelihood of foreign insects crossing borders. Ports in Los Angeles, Houston, and Savannah have all reported rising incidents of insect interceptions. Customs officials work tirelessly to inspect shipments, but even with strict biosecurity measures, only a fraction of containers can be examined closely. Once an invasive bee establishes a foothold, eradication becomes almost impossible. The consequences ripple far beyond honey production. Wild pollinators, native bees, butterflies, and other insects are being pushed out of their natural habitats. Invasive bees often outcompete native species for flowers and nesting sites, leaving little room for biodiversity. This imbalance can alter entire ecosystems, affecting not just crops but wild plants, forests, and even the animals that depend on them. For farmers, that means reduced yields and higher costs. For consumers, it could mean more expensive fruits, nuts, and vegetables, and less of them. Beekeepers are feeling the pain firsthand. Many report losing 30 to 40% of their colonies annually, a staggering figure that was unthinkable just a generation ago. The losses aren't just due to direct attacks, but also to diseases that invasive species spread. Viruses like deformed wing virus and nosema now infect hives across the country. These pathogens weaken bees, shorten their lifespans, and make them more susceptible to cold and pesticides. The financial toll is enormous. Beekeepers spend thousands each year on medication, hive replacements, and labor just to stay afloat. For small-scale operators, it's a fight for survival. Yet amid the crisis, innovation is emerging. American scientists are deploying technology in the same way Japan has revolutionized fishing, with robots, sensors, and AI. Some research teams are developing smart hives, equipped with thermal and acoustic sensors that monitor bee activity and detect early signs of disease or infestation. AI algorithms can analyze hive sounds to identify stress patterns, warning beekeepers of trouble before collapse occurs. Others are experimenting with drone-based detection systems to locate wild hornet nests hidden deep in the woods. There's even progress in breeding disease-resistant bees, selectively crossing colonies that show natural immunity to mites and viruses. These efforts, though expensive, could be the industry's best hope for survival. Still, the human element remains irreplaceable. Across the country, beekeepers are forming networks to share data and coordinate defense. In states like Oregon and Georgia, community bee watch programs help track invasive sightings in real time. Farmers are encouraged to plant pollinator-friendly crops and avoid harmful pesticides. Governments are stepping in too. The U.S. Department of Agriculture has launched several task forces focused on containment, import inspection, and genetic research. Grants are being offered to rebuild lost colonies and test new technologies. The war to protect American bees has become a national priority. But there's another dimension to this story, one that runs deeper than economics or ecology. For many Americans, bees represent more than just pollinators. They're a symbol of balance, resilience, and hard work. Watching them struggle against an unstoppable tide of invasive threats feels like a mirror of modern life, where global connectivity brings prosperity but also unseen dangers. Each invasive species tells the same cautionary tale. When we move goods and people across the planet, we move everything else with us. The $700 million honey industry now stands at a crossroads. On one path lies adaptation, new technology, genetic innovation, and international cooperation. On the other lies decline, as invasive species overwhelm a fragile ecosystem already under strain from climate change and habitat loss. The outcome will determine not just the future of American honey, but the stability of crops and food chains that depend on pollination. If the bees fall, so does much of what feeds us.